describe it as I was in freeze for many years. There's a difference between self-esteem and self-worth. One way I had of coping with the loneliness that I felt in childhood was... And it was just a big game changer. And during that time, you know, the voice in my head was getting really loud, and it was saying, you know, oh, you need to do this. You're an idiot. You know, it was getting really negative. And yeah, doing that time without my phone, without my laptop, it really brought a lot of things to light. And I just kept writing in the journal. And it was on this retreat in that space where I got guidance to train to be a therapist. No, I knew.
Amazing.
Yeah, I knew when I came back from that, I was like, right, book it. Let's do this.
Did you know that was your sort of calling from then? You were like, that's exactly the direction I want to go in. I just find it very... I was just trying to wrap my brain a second ago on the Jamie episode. He says something very similar. But he was like, when was the last time you've ever sat there for 5 minutes and just allowed yourself to be in your own head? And that just kind of reminded me of that when you said it. I just thought it was very interesting that we brought that up on the last episode as well.
Yeah, and I think I really resonate with what Jamie said there.
Yeah.
Because I think, in essence, that's what recovery is. You know, it's recovering the lost self, right? The self that is lost to trauma. The essence of trauma is the loss of self. So that's what was starting to happen to me, like in giving myself that space and that time. And I was around trees as well, nature, and I put the phone down and I actively said, right, I'm going to try and feel this. And I remember the first night I was so nervous, you know, and I wrote down in my journal, and I still remember it was something like, okay, I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling lonely, I'm feeling excited. You know, it was all these things. I'm missing my ex-partner. Here goes nothing. Right? And it was kind of like a leap of faith. And I came back from that experience, and a friend mentioned Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, which is a 12-step program that kind of focuses on relationship, codependency, fantasy, obsessive thinking around romance. And that really appealed to me. And I'm always someone that kind of tends to go 110 in. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. Yeah.
Completely the same. You're either all in or you're doing nothing.
Right.
Completely agree.
Yeah, and I think Jamie in your last episode alluded to that, the kind of 3 pillars of a successful person, which I really, really enjoyed hearing. And I do have that drive in me. And I think what I did with my recovery was I was very militant, right? So I went all in there. I did a 10-day silent retreat. I did the Hoffman process. I did 12 steps. I did IFS. And I just went... I said, right, I'm going to feel my feelings. No smartphone, 8 months, right? No social media. And I just went straight in there. And I wouldn't recommend that. And when I'm working with clients now, I don't sit there on the first session and go, hey, right, you're not doing any of these things. Right? I don't do that. I just want to clarify that. I don't do that. But I decided to do that.
Yeah.
And because there was a part of me that was like, right, we need to heal. And it was very, very militant. I'm grateful for that experience because I went into the militancy of the meditation and the feelings, and now I'm finding my middle ground. And it's really lovely because in the middle ground it means I'm allowing some flexibility in, you know, and as I was saying, just play and moments where I'm not working on myself, because I did get addicted to recovery, or let's say I did get obsessed with recovery. It's probably a better phrase. And that happens. My whole life became around retreats, became around, you know, I didn't have a fiction book on the go. It was always Gabor Mate or some sort of trauma-related book. And I used to make a joke about it, like I'd be there reading Alice Miller, The Drama of the Gifted Child, like just before I went to bed, you know. And my mum would be like, God, why? God, do you not have a break? You know? And I'm just like, I'm not interested in the other stuff. But I don't think it's that I wasn't interested. It's that it didn't feel valuable. Whereas now it feels valuable. You know, I listen to Talk Sport in the morning and I love it. You know, I love hearing a Manchester United fan, you know, call up and just moan. I don't know why. I love it. I just love it.
I'm the same.
Right?
Yeah.
What, it appeals to you to kind of have that in your life?
For the same reasons. I've really opened myself up to the kind of thing and going back into the play. I honestly, when you're saying things, I was nodding along, being like, I can relate to everything you're saying. Right. It's honestly, it's so poignant. I wanted to take you back to the recovery. Would you say that you were sort of had this codependency on drug and alcohol from even those early days when we were sort of 16 to 18 all the way through to say 20, did you say 2020 around that
Yeah,
time?
2020. So
Would you say there was a codependency from all that time from 2011, 2012 all the way through when we were finishing school to that point?
So with drugs, I did predominantly it was weed and MDMA, and I would say that I was able to knock weed on its head when I was went to university, because I started to have panic attacks, and so the weed just really wasn't medicating me in that way. It actually elevated my anxiety.
Really?
Right?
Okay.
Oh goodness, yes, it really did. And so I was able to drop the weed and I focused on acting, right? And that was my thing. I wanted to be an actor, and I got really obsessed with that. And so I put the weed down. I was still drinking very heavily. I'd say I knocked the drugs though when I went to Bestival when I was about 21, and I ended up in the A&E tent because I had done so many drugs that I couldn't breathe, and and I don't know what it was, but I kind of felt like I got it out of my system, really. And I went to A&E 3 times, I believe, in my years of taking drugs. And then when I stopped taking drugs, it's like I went into fight or flight. So it's like I describe it as I was in freeze for many years. So disconnected, dissociated from my body to protect myself. I wasn't ready yet, didn't have the resources. So my body helped me by that disconnection. And then when I stopped medicating myself, that's when all the fight or flight or the panic or the repressed stuff just came flooding up. And so I kind of coped with that through various ways. I was listening to David Goggins and going to the gym a lot of the time. And I could talk a bit about how I see kind of Goggins and now and stuff. Maybe we'll get to that later. But going to the gym, I wanted to build my business up, and I had a girlfriend. And in that brief moment in time, I remember feeling like I belonged, like I was a competent member of society. A man, yes, but an adult, right? And I remember walking the street feeling like, yes, this is great. But it was very fragile, because then lockdown came, business crumbled to the ground, broke up with my partner. And it turns out that maintaining a six-pack and muscles when you're going through a stressful period and you want to have a pizza or, it's just not, it wasn't feasible for me. And it was held together by this shame. As soon as I had one bit of pizza, there was a part of me going, hey, mate, you need to be careful with that, because you're trying to maintain. So it was a very fragile way of coping with existence. And it wasn't until I got into 12 steps that I stabilized.
That's really interesting. I wanted to come. What was the most important lesson you've probably taken from this experience of when you did have your business and you felt on top of the world and then it came crumbling down? What was your most important lesson from that, which you took?
There's a difference between self-esteem and self-worth. Self-esteem is what others think of me, and it's built on a foundation of external resources. So maintaining my muscles. So you look at me, I've got muscles, right? My business. You look at my business, I'm earning. You look at my girlfriend, my partner. She's attractive, she's fit, right? So this is an external image that I am relying on society, or at least I am imagining of what society. So for me, it was always, what would my mates think of my partner? Right?
Interesting, yeah.
Right? So I would go to a birthday and a friend would be like, wow, that's your girlfriend? I'd be like, yeah. Beautiful. She's so beautiful, right? Yeah. And so there was this shadow, what we call shadow, right? What we hide, repress, or deny, something that's lurking beneath the surface. There was some shadow to my wanting to build a company, wanting to maintain my muscles, and wanting to have a girlfriend. Now, none of those things are innately wrong at all.
Yeah.
I still love going to the gym. I've got a business now as well that's doing better than ever. And a partner is something I really value and see in my future. So it's just what was driving it, right? And so there's a difference between self-esteem and self-worth. And self-worth is something that is innate. It comes from within, and it's not dependent on external resources. And that is something I still grapple with. I have to have a chat with my guy who wants to be famous. He's still there. Right? He's still there because, like I said, I wanted to be an actor. And as I start to go public with my story and writing the book and doing, podcasts like this one, I'm really having to check in with myself and that part of me that does want to be famous, and that does want the self-esteem piece of it, because it was one way I had of coping with the loneliness that I felt in childhood was I had hope that I was going to be famous. I got told when I was in hospital that I was special. And it was hard not to believe that. I was at Great Ormond Street. My first memory is of playing PlayStation with a boy that had no hands. And I grew up in hospital. And so receiving that message of, you're special, Will, I wanted to feel that specialness all the time. And that part of me is still holding that a little bit, right? And so I am aware of it now more, I'd say. And I kind of meet it with a sense of, okay, I get it. I get you. I hear you. However, it's not necessarily about me anymore. I've got on my wall in the morning every time, I'm a part of something bigger than me. Right?
I love that.
Yeah, I like that.
That really helps to ground me.
Go. Do you feel like going through everything you've gone through has allowed you to sort of relate to your clients now and the people that come and see you? Because we talked about this all the time when we had Dr. Mark Rackley on. It's like, he's so relatable.
Great episode.
And people going through those problems and then going into a role like psychotherapy counselling is, for me, if I was to go through what I've gone through again and I was to go and see you, it would give me a load of reassurance knowing that you've also gone through a lot of things and you've found your way through. Do you feel like it helps you with your clients now and able to better understanding them?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's this archetype of the wounded healer, right? And I'm confident that any sort of therapist that's experienced and working with clients and effective in some way has an experience that they're drawing upon, right? And I wouldn't say it's like everyone. The way I think of it is not everyone's like me. So I have to remind myself that everyone's having their own unique experience made up of different colors, right? Different set and scenery, different people, different experiences. But at the same time, the colors that make up their experience, they're not in the same order, but I know them, some of them, right? Through my own experience. And yeah, definitely going through recovery and stabilizing and going from having panic attacks every day and severe bouts of depression and actually like going to bed at times now excited to get up in the morning. It just blows me away. Like moments of just complete joy, throwing a stone in. I live by the shore, by the way. I live in St. Leonard, so I live by the coast now, and throwing a stone into the sea, or waking up and just going on a walk on my own without anything in my ears, but just breathing and just feeling as like I'm just continuing to land in my body and open up. And it's taking me to places that I could never have perceived. If you had told me 2 years ago that I was going to be going around schools talking about masculinity and Andrew Tate, I didn't want to get involved in that. That's so scary to talk about a conversation that feels so charged. But I went to the psychotherapy course, and I told you how I landed on that was when I went on the retreat and got the guidance, and then from within, and then on the course, in my class I was like, hang on, I know this person. I've read his book, Chris, and then he's a colleague now, and he runs the business that he got me involved in. So he's on my course. We're in the same class, awesome. And I meet him, and now I'm here, chatting to you and Joe from my part. It's amazing. And so the way I see it is it's opening up. So that's the first step for me, opening up. And then in opening up, I start to feel a sense of stability and security, right? So I feel like I have support because I'm opening up to people. Once I had that support and that stability, I then felt I could start to show up, right? And that's the scary part. Well, actually, the support is scary in a different way. But then leaving the support, which is secure attachment, right? So you have a secure attachment, a sense of support, a sense of safety that you can come back to. And then you can go exploring. So you leave that and you go exploring, and then you come across challenges. And it's in those challenges where one gets activated. and then comes back, processes, learns, grows. Oh, wow, right? And then you can continue and go on. And that's the way I look at things, I'd say.
So
and it's what's kind of happening right now, yeah.
You mentioned support there.
Yeah.
Now, support for you is something that you didn't really have a lot of growing up in terms of, you know, I don't know your parents per se, but your parental relationship sounds like a complicated one. Now, what do you have in the way of support now in the last couple of years since that? Is your relationship with your parents better? Is it worsened? Is it, where's your support system right now other than yourself?
Yeah. So, yeah. It started off by going into 12 steps.
Mm-hmm.
That was a non-judgmental space where I began to share what was beneath my bravado, right? The fear, the loneliness. And I started to piece myself back together. Now, I developed friendships in this community, which I've since kind of stepped back from, which you could maybe touch a bit later. But I developed friendships, and it was in these friendships that I started to develop an understanding of how to support friends and also receive support, holding space, right? And I was very fortunate to meet two guys, Ben and Rid, my two best friends. And years ago, actually, just before recovery, I read a book called The Gulag Archipelago, right? And it was written by a guy called Solzhenitsyn. And for those of you that don't know, the only thing that's relevant is that he was in Stalin's Russia. He was locked up, right? And he described a part of him being in a prison cell where it was him and lots of other kind of scientist types. Mm-hmm. And he said that every day they'd wake up and they'd just be talking to one another. They'd give talks. So for 40 minutes, he'd be talking. We'd just all be tuning in, and then we'd ask questions. And he said he never felt more free in his life in that prison cell, connecting with these other people. So I said to my guys, I said, actually, Ben and Rid, I'm not claiming that it was my idea. I heard them. Yeah. I was like, hey, it wasn't your idea. Whoever's idea it was, I think it was mine. I said, guys, why don't we try that? And I'll never forget this night. They came over and we each had 15 minutes to do a talk. And the other two just completely listened. And then we asked questions. Now, we chose subjects that scared us, and I chose feminism. At that time, it really scared me to even go near. I was in kind of floating around the manosphere, which is what it's called now back then. And yeah, I remember that night so well. We chatted for about 5 hours, the most scintillating conversation, completely sober, one of the first properly sober nights that I'd had. And then we had fish and chips, and we had a fried halloumi burger as well, which I'll never forget. And I've got to say, guys, I remember texting them, that's the best night of my life.
Wow.
Best night of my life, because it felt like two people were really listening to me. And I started to see, oh my goodness, am I paying attention to people? I don't think I am. When I'm in a conversation with someone, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. That was the first thing I noticed. And I'm finding it uncomfortable on a somatic level within the body. There is a very subtle level of discomfort when someone else is speaking that is intruding upon my ability to really listen. And so I started to realize that I don't think I'm co-regulating with people. And what I mean by that is that when we're having a conversation where two people feel heard, it actually does something to our physiology. We feel more regulated. We feel more connected. I kind of feel it right now, to be honest, you know? It's
I'm not listening to you, but I
I was thinking that. No.
What did you say?
Right. Yeah, actually, and so that was a big game changer for me.
Yeah,
because I realized that on some level I was absorbed in my own pain, completely understandably. No judgment here towards my previous self, but there was at the beginning. But now I can understand I was so absorbed. So I don't consider it selfish. I consider it self-absorbed. I was absorbed in my own suffering. And because of that, I found it really hard to have capacity to hold space for others and experience co-regulation. Now that I have capacity for that, my social life has never been more full. And before, I always used to be someone that would like look at other people with all their diaries that were full up, and I'd be like, how is your diary so full up? I feel like I struggle to fill my diary up. And I used to wonder, why do people not want to spend time with me? And they still loved me. Of course they did. And a lot of these friends are still my friends now. But it was an uncomfortable truth that I had to realize, that unfortunately I didn't have the capacity to hold space because I hadn't held space for myself first. I had to do that. I had to go away and give myself space. I had to give myself self-empathy before I could empathize with others. And this is something I bring to the students at school and this empathy workshop we do. And God, it's so amazing sometimes to see things click, because it's so empowering to know if you're able to hold space and support someone, then you are an incredibly resourceful person, or a person that people will probably want to be around as well. And I think what's happened now is I've got a men's group. So I've got 2 men's groups. One of them's with Rid and Ben still, but it's mostly online and we meet up every few months. And then I have an in-person men's group. Every 2 weeks we meet up, and I have friends where we have a system. There's a check-in call and there's a support call. So check-in is more casual. That's just like, anyone got time for a check-in? Yeah, when I've finished work on the weekend. Support call. This blew me away, something that happened the other day. Something came up for me and I messaged Ben, who's in the group. I said, you got time for a support call? He messages me back, I'm in the car with my folks. Say the word and I'll pull over. And I showed that to my dad and I just thought, holy Can I swear on the show?
Yeah, go
okay,
for it.
cool. I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, I'm not going to say it again. That's so weird for future. Yeah, so I tell that story now because it's genuinely
Powerful.
is something I'm so blessed and grateful for, to have a friend that, say the word and I'll pull over. It really touches me. And then one thing I will say about my parents is that we've been on this incredible journey. Like, started off incredibly disconnected. As I said, there was violence. Me and my dad, very volatile relationship. Just when I try and like explain it to people, it's like what it's like to be in a house where every day you wake up. And I've asked them, by the way, I did chat with them. I said, "Are you okay with me talking about our journey?" And they said, "Yeah, go for it." And that shows, I think,
It's nice in itself to be able to do that.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
To be that open with them now, but the way I describe it is waking up every day and then walking into tension, right? Arguments, the tension at the dinner table, just holding that on a chronic level, on a consistent level over time. They call it attritional trauma or small t trauma, right? This kind of build up of storing resentment or emotions, or storing anger, which then becomes resentment. And yeah, that's accumulated. And so I had to spend some time away when I was in recovery from my dad and my mum. And I had to go into a place where I had to deal with all the rage, the trap rage that I had towards my dad at first. And so I did something called the Hoffman process. And it's this renowned retreat that really became a container for me to express what had been unexpressed in me for so long. I did it with 23 other people. And there's one part that I can share about. We were in a marquee and they gave us a pillow, and we've been, accessing the unexpressed. And I had this bat, this wiffle bat, and I had a pillow. And they said, right, go, get it out, sort of thing. Exert, cathartic release, that sort of approach. And I felt self-conscious, right? And they had music on and everyone was just going for it. And I couldn't do it. I was like, oh. And then the facilitator said, if you're self-conscious, bash the self-consciousness. And all of a sudden, all this energy came in me. And I was like, I'm so fed up of being self-conscious. And there's a part of me that had rage towards my self-consciousness that I had never expressed. So all of a sudden, I'm bashing. And then I was able to access this kind of trapped anger or rage, complete rage that I had in me that I didn't even know I'd had in me. And that's when I realized about stored energy, how it's real. Like, it felt real in that moment. all this relief. Like, I had never seen anything like it. And I got that out. And I was like, There was a part of me that wanted to, let me just put it this way, actively harm my dad. Right? And there's another part that goes, oh, don't express that. He's your dad. He's always, didn't matter. In that space, it was in me. It needed to come out. And they said that. Doesn't matter whether it's true or not. If your 5-year-old self believed that at one point in one time, it has a right to be expressed. And you can express it here. And they didn't need to hear it. I needed to hear it. That was all. They had music on. Everyone was screaming. You can imagine 24 people in a market. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's pretty wild. But it was one of the most profound moments within my journey of release. And then moving through that rage, I then felt grief.
Hey guys, Tom here. We hope you enjoyed part 2. If you do enjoy these videos, please like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us massively. Here's a bit of what you can expect to see in part 3.
Things are luring boys in because it's not just Andrew Tate saying that, it's the world. I can't think my way to good action. I have to act my way to good thinking. I said to him, Dad, 2 choices.